Often when we first engage in therapy, one of the things that we want is some kind of validation from our therapist. When we've been arguing with our partner for a long time over things that feel so instinctively obvious and right to us, we can start to feel like we're going a bit crazy, right? We've been trying to communicate what feel like really reasonable needs and concerns, but no matter how hard we try, they just don't get it, right? And you get to this point where you almost begin to doubt your own sanity. You think, am I actually crazy? This behavior is toxic, right? So I think one of the things we want when we engage in therapy is for the therapist to reassure us that no, we're not crazy, and what we're asking for is in fact completely reasonable. Right? And potentially we're hoping for a little bit of backup, maybe. Like we want them to challenge our partner's faulty beliefs and toxic behaviors. Does that resonate with you at all? Like that feeling that you're no longer sure whether or not you're being unreasonable and you just want a third party to tell you your needs are actually valid? Or potentially you're very sure that you're being reasonable and you just need an actual professional to tell your partner that. So if that's what you're hoping for, you might actually be a little bit disappointed in the first sort of 3 to 5 sessions. And that's because one of the most important things we need to do as therapists, particularly in early sessions, is to establish ourselves as what's called a non-biased third party. That is, as someone who's not taking sides and who is here to ensure the needs of both partners are met. So it's relatively common to have couples coming in for therapy where it's clear that one party is maybe here physically but not necessarily going to actively participate. But they're showing up physically, they go through the motions, but they're not really engaged. That dynamic is not going to give you long-term lasting change in your relationship. You might get some kind of short-term relief, but you're not going to see any real behavioral change. Right? In order to see lasting change, we need to make sure that both parties are actually actively engaged in therapy. So as therapists, we need to do everything we can to ensure that both partners are reassured that we're there for them just as much as we are for their partner. So I have other videos that go into a little bit more detail in terms of the neuroscience, but essentially what we want to do is to prevent both brains from going into what we call self-protection mode. So when we feel that our needs and opinions are being challenged, dismissed, or ignored, if we're anxious that we're looking like the bad guy, or that our therapist and our partner are perhaps forming some kind of alliance, our brains are going to reflexively activate defense mechanisms in order to protect us. We're going to mentally and emotionally shut down or withdraw and become very much unable to genuinely consider or understand our partner's point of view. So if your partner goes into defensive mode, it just becomes incredibly difficult to actually have productive sessions. So whilst challenging the beliefs and behaviors of both partners is obviously really important and definitely more common in later sessions, in our earlier sessions, a therapist is going to be far more invested in trying to understand what the issue looks like for each person and also in creating an environment where both partners feel that their needs are valued and considered. So if you're sitting there during an early session thinking, does she not see what's going on here? Like, maybe I am crazy. It doesn't seem like she entirely disagrees with my partner. No, it's not that. You're not crazy. But we want to make sure that you both feel safe enough to actually actively engage. We're doing our best to validate the feelings of both of you without agreeing with either of you. The last thing we want is for one partner to feel blamed or left out and mentally withdraw from the process. So once we have a good working relationship and we all feel comfortable with one another, we can start to be a little bit more open with one another and challenge both partners a little bit more. So I hope this video has given you a little bit more information in terms of the context for those earlier sessions and what we're trying to achieve in those earlier sessions.